So the interviewer will ask you to create a form that looks something like this. So if you notice over here, this has multiple steps inside of it. So let's go on and fill it. Okay, I filled the personal info. And now personal info is complete and we are on the next step. But keep in mind, this is the same form. So if I fill this up as well and click on next, and then we are on the billing info, let me just enter some dummy data. And notice, as soon as I click on submit, the form has been submitted. And if we see, I have console logged all of these values and the complete form's values are over here. So they were not separate forms. They were just one big form divided into small chunks. And this is a very important interview question as well, asked in a lot of companies. And in this video, I'll show you the exact best practices that you should use to create a form like this in perspective of an interview, as well as if you are trying to implement it as a feature inside of your company as well. And by the way, I've discussed a lot of such questions in my front-end interview preparation resource as well. So if you want, you can check it out by clicking the link in the description down below. Right now, there's a Diwali sale going on and you can enter this coupon code to get the biggest discount yet. Alright, so first of all, let's understand the high-level flow on how this thing is going to work, right? So you can notice we have user over here who is trying to enter some information, and they will go first of all to the personal info form, that is this form right here, right? They will enter the info and the info will go through React hook form. Now, if you don't know how React hook form works, don't worry, I will explain you in this video as well. Or you can also check out my separate video on React hook form that I've created on my channel. So it goes through React hook form and it checks for the validation. First of all, it will check if all of the fields entered by user have the proper data, and once the validation is done, it will send the validation result to a custom hook called use multi-step form. And this is a hook that we will be creating in this video from absolute scratch. And you know, custom hooks are very important when it comes to React as well as React interviews, right? So make sure that you have very good knowledge on how you can create custom hooks as well, right? And again, I've discussed all of these in my front-end interview prep course as well, right? So it will send the validation result, and after this, our hook will contain all of the main logic. And one of the things is our form data, right? All of the values that we will be sending inside of our form will be stored inside of this form data. So, okay, it will take all of this value and it will store it inside of the data. Now, user clicks next step. So right now we will click next step. So we are on the personal info. Now what will happen? It will again go back to our multi-step form component that we will be creating, and it will check all of the progress steps. What progress are we on? Are we on this step? Are we on this step? Are we supposed to submit the form, or we are supposed to go to next form, right? So over here, if we have reached submit stage, then we will show the success screen. Else we will continue it and we will go to the next step, that is professional info step, right? And again, it will follow the same step from over here. It will go to React hook form, it will validate it, and it will go again to form data stage, and it will add all of the values over there. Once we are on the very last step and user has filled it up, then it can check the progress step. And if we are on the last step, then it will show the success screen that I just showed at the beginning of this video, right? So this is a very high level flow. And if something like this is asked in form of a system design question, then you can, explain it something like this. You can create a high level diagram very similar to this one, right? And then you can move towards the LLD if interviewers ask you to code this as well, right? Now, one thing that I would like to mention over here, the code I will be writing in this video will be with respect to the enterprise grade code that we generally write in companies, right? So that might not be possible to write in the interviews exactly using TypeScript and all of those things, right? So try to take everything that I've explained in this video, and maybe you can try to create a simplified version of that on your own, because my aim is to explain you the 100% of the things. But even if you are able to implement like 50 or 60%, that is also pretty good in the interviews, right? You are not supposed to create it as a perfect component, but something that works and follows relatively good practices that is expected from you as a developer, right? So, okay, let's move forward. All right, so open VS Code over here and let's go and initialize a brand new React.js app. So I'm going to open my terminal and I'm going to say npm create wheat at latest and press enter. It's going to ask us to proceed. Yes. Project name. If you want, you can give it a project name and it will create a folder right here. But since I'm already inside this folder, I'm just going to press dot so that it creates the project right here. I'm going to choose React and TypeScript. Use roll down wheat. No. Install with npm. Yes. All right, there we go. Let's click on this link and our brand new React app is initialized. Now, if you go to src, inside of app.tsx, this is where our code exists, right? So for now, what I'll do, I'll just get rid of all of the code inside of right here, inside of return statement over here. I'm just gonna have a div and I'll say subscribe to Roadside Coder, which you should if you haven't yet. Let's get rid of all of the styles inside of app.css and inside of index.css as well. So now if I go back, you will see, we just see this subscribe to Roadside Coder right here. Nice. Now, first thing, what I want to do over here, I want to initialize, I want to install ShadCN UI, right? So what is ShadCN UI? So ShadCN UI basically provides us pre-built components out of the box. If you want, you can use some other library, or you can just use simple Tailwind CSS, because ShadCN UI is built on top of Tailwind CSS and it is used a lot nowadays. So how do we install it? Let's click on get started. I'm going to choose Vite. So we've already installed Vite. Now we need to install Tailwind CSS. Okay, so just copy it. Let's open a new terminal and paste it right here. So this will get installed. After this, inside of index.css, we need to import Tailwind CSS. So, okay, right here inside of index CSS, then we need to edit tsconfig.json file by adding these compiler options. Okay, and you don't need to worry much about these things right here. This is just an initial configuration. So right here, I'm just going to add this compiler options so that Tailwind knows what are the files that it need to look at. Same thing with tsconfig.app.json. So I'll just copy this up, base URL and path. So over here, I'm just going to come down and paste it right here. Okay, what else? Now we need to install @types/node as well for so that it refers to the types that it will be using throughout the project. So I'll just paste it right here, @types/node. And then inside of vite.config.ts, we need to import Tailwind CSS. So over here, vite.config.ts, let's just copy it up and paste it right here, right? Something like this. And with this, mostly our configuration is done. Now we need to install ShadCN UI. So in the terminal, just paste npx shadcn @latest init. Proceed, yes. It's gonna ask the base color. I'm just gonna press enter for neutral, and it will do everything by itself by installing dependencies and all. And that is all. But what is ShadCN UI all about? So if you notice, they have given an example of a button right here. So you see, we have a bunch of different components right here. Like for example, if I go to this button component, what we can do? We can simply install this button by saying npx shadcn @latest add button, and it will add the button inside of our project. And now to simply use it, we can just say this button component, we can import it, and we can write something inside of it. And we can provide the variant as well. So it has a bunch of different variants. So you see, this is the default variant, the outline variant, secondary, ghost, destructive, etc. Right? So there are a bunch of such component right here. Why don't we go on and install this button component? So if I just paste it right here, you will notice. There we go. It is installed and it has created this components folder right here. And by the way, let's get rid of this assets folder. We don't need it. Yeah. So you see inside of this components folder, we have this UI right here where it has created this button component. Now, if you want, you can configure it according to you. You can see it has like the simple Tailwind CSS that we generally write with all of the variants, right? So again, it is very customizable as well. And if I show you inside of our final app, see, we have all these steps right here. We have this button. Again, this is the ShadCN UI button component. We are also going to be installing the input tag for select as well that we'll be using over here, label, and this card component, right? So why don't we go on and install them one by one? Like for example, this card component. I'm just going to copy this up and paste it so that later on we don't have to put headache installing these. These are just a few components only. So card and this input tag, right? So we just have to say input. Again, I would highly recommend you guys to go and check it out yourself as well. Input select, then label. And that is pretty much it that we're going to be needing from ShadCN UI. Let's press enter and it will install it right here inside this UI folder as well. But before moving forward, I want to show you the easiest way to deploy any type of application on the web. Whether it's an API or a web app, you can deploy it by using Sevala. Let me show you how you can go on and deploy this app on Sevala right here, right? So I'm going to click on add service and click on application. Now it will ask you GitHub repository, or if you have a Docker image as well, you can add this right here, right? So I'm going to go on with the Git repository. I'll click on connect GitHub. Now we can choose this right here. Let's choose master branch. You can choose resources. So for now, I'm just going to choose this hobby project, and keep in mind, we do have $50 balance inside of our account, so we don't need to worry about pricing and stuff right now. And now simply click on create and deploy, and let's see what happens. Now, few things that I really like about Sevala is that it is very easy to use, plus it gives us the options to configure the complete CI/CD pipeline along with the Docker images that I already showed you, and it supports many tech stack and even backend and databases and all as well, right? So right here you can see it is building it. If you go to this overview right here, it will give you the overview of your application, what is enabled right here. If you want to enable CDN, edge caching, all of these things, you can do them from right here. You can connect services if you want from over here as well. And there we go, it is deployed. Awesome. Let's click on visit app, and you can see it is deployed on Sevala's domain right now. I would highly encourage you guys to go on and explore it and deploy your backends and front ends on Sevala. I've provided you the link in the description down below if you want to check it out. Alright, so now that this is done, why don't we go on and try to import it? So if I just say, instead of this div, I'll say button, import it from Shatc UI. Let's give it variant of outline. Let's see. Yes, this looks good. Okay, so now you have the idea how Shatc UI basically works. It's nothing very special. So first thing first, as I explained you in that diagram, we're going to be using additional libraries like React Hook Form and Zord to manage our form. And since we're using TypeScript, we are going to be having types, like different types for different form fields, right? And Zord will help us massively in that. So if you notice, this is our form, right? We have first name, last name. So we have to define all of these types somewhere, right? So why don't we go on over here and create a new file called types.ts. Now, how do you create the schemas for this form? So Zord will help us here massively, because Zord will auto-generate the types for these forms after we have created the schemas. So let's just first go on and install React Hook Form along with Zord. And again, if you have not worked with React Hook Form in the past, I will tell you everything in this video. Or you can also watch my dedicated video on React Hook Form on my channel. Just search React Hook Form roadside coder on YouTube, you'll find it. Right, so I'll say npm install react-hook-form space Zord. And then we're going to be needing one more package, which is at hookform/resolvers, which will help us connect React Hook Form along with Zord. So press enter. There we go. All right, now inside of this types.ts file, we're going to be creating the schemas for all of the steps. So first of all, I'm going to say export const personal info schema for the very first section of our form, right? So for the personal information. So how do you create a schema? You'll say z and import z from Zord. So I'll say import z from Zord, something like this. And this z right here is a huge object. It will give you multiple different things. What we need is an object, because this personal info schema is an object, right? Which we're trying to define over here. So inside of it, I'm going to have multiple different types of fields, like first of all, first name. Now we have to define the criteria for this first name. So I'll say z.string. It will be first of all a string, right? And minimum, we want to have at least one character over here. So minimum, I'll say one character. If that is not present, we will throw an error. First name is required. Something like this, right? And similar to this, we can create other fields as well. Like for example, last name, same as previous one. If you want to create for email, then you just have to say z.string.email, right? And it will handle everything. If it's not an email, it will throw the error, invalid email address, or whatever you define right here. Similar to this, you can have for phone as well. It'll be z.string, and minimum, it should have 10 characters, else phone number is too short, right? So it's for all four of these. Now, if we fill this up, here, see something I've filled it over here. If I press next, we have company, position, then we have a select tag with years of experience and industry. So I'm going to create a separate schema for this form. So let's just put it over here. And this one will be export const professional info schema, right? Z.object. And inside of this, let's create for each and every field. First of all, for company, it'll be z.string, minimum one character. Otherwise, company is required error will show up. For the position, it's also going to be a string similar to that. Now, after this, we're going to have this select, right? That is, we can only choose between these values. So what I'll say, experience and z.enum. So enum basically means that you can only enter values which are either any of these, right? Then after this, for industry, again, same, we're going to be entering the text. So z.string minimum 1, otherwise industry is required. Okay, let's fill this up as well. I'm going to press next. And now we have a billing information which asks for card number, card holder name, expiry date, CVV, etc. Now, one thing that I want to clarify over here, this is not how you should handle the billing information in the production. It should be done via some payment provider like Stripe or something like that, right? They have proper PCI compliant forms and all, I guess, to handle these things. But this is just for an example. If you want, you can change this field, right? So over here, for card number, I'm going to say it should have at least 16 values, like 16 digits. You can see it's giving us error in real time as well, right? Card holder name, I'm going to press like enter anything. We can have some expiry date over here, right? So it will give us invalid error if this is not the proper date, and CVV, it should be of 3 characters, right? So something like this. So how do we create for this? So I'll say export const billing info schema. Inside this, first of all, for card number, it should have minimum 16 and maximum 16 as well, right? So I'm going to say z.string, minimum it should have 16 characters and maximum it should have 16 characters. If it exceeds 16, then it will give this error. If it's less than 16, then it will give this error. If you want, you can change these as well according to you, right? Again, then name, same as what we've done before, string. Now for the expiry date, we will say z.string.min 4, right? Because this is what is required for us to enter inside of a billing area, right? And again, I'm just showcasing this sort of as a placeholder because obviously you should not accept card information like this. So if you want, you can change this expiry date and use something like z.date over here to have proper date class right here. And for CVV, since it's going to be minimum 3, so I'll say CVV z.string. If it's not minimum 3, then I'll say invalid CVV, and it should be max 4, right? So these are the 3 schemas that we will be using for our form. Now, how do you generate the types out of it? So it's pretty simple. I'll show you. I'm going to say export type personal info, and I'll take this personal info schema, and Zord will provide us the type. So I'll say z.infer, and inside this, I'll say type of this thing right here, right? Similar to this, we can do for other schemas as well. So for professional info and billing info. And yep, that's it. This is all we need for now. We will come back to this file if we want to add some other type as we are building our app. Cool. Now let's do one thing. Let me just close all of these. Let's go to app.tsx, and right here, I'm going to remove this and I'll say multi-step form. We'll create this multi-step form component over here. So inside of this components folder, I'm going to say new file, multi-step form.tsx, and press enter, RAFCE, multi-step form. Okay, let's import it right here, and we don't need to touch this app.tsx again. This is where our main form component is going to be. So as we discussed in the diagram, most of our logic for our form is going to be inside of a custom hook, right? So we're going to define a custom hook. We're going to import a custom hook right here with all of the logic for current step and our state as well, like form data. What is the first step? What is the last step? If the form is submitted already, if we like the logic to go to the next step, to go to previous step, right? Everything, it will be inside of this custom hook, which we will be creating in just a moment. Then after this, we're going to be importing React hook form right here. So I'll say use form, and we're going to be importing this use form from React hook form, right? And this use form, I'll tell you what it does is it binds everything together. Like it takes all of the Zord schema and everything. It defines what mode that we are currently on when it comes to submitting the form. If we are checking it in real time, it takes the default value of the form and all those sort of things. And we also need to provide it how our form is going to look like, right? So it's going to know it as follows. So inside of it, first of all, we're going to take an object, and it will have a resolver, which will take Zord resolver. So this was the package that we installed, right? Zord resolve, like this at hook form /resolver, right? This is responsible for connecting React hook form with Zord. And inside of this, we can provide the current schema for the form that we are on. So all of this logic we have to create inside of our custom hook. So we will create a function like get current step schema. Again, obviously this does not exist, so I'm just going to comment it out for now. But for this form, we also need to provide the type of our form, right? So over here, we need to provide the type for the form. And we have all of these right here. But at once, there can only be one form active, right? So what we can do, below it, I'm going to create the union of all step data. So I'll say step form data equals personal info or professional info or billing info. That is, the type can either be any of these three things. So over here, I can just say step form data and import it. So it will get much more easier to work with this. Now say const, and we will destructure this so that it provides us a bunch of different things right here. And one of them is this register function, which will help us to get the values from our form. We also have the handle submit function, which is used while we are submitting the form. And again, I will show you all of these things. We have the form state, which provides us a lot of things like if the form is loading, is ready, etc., etc. What we need over here is the errors, right? If there's any error in the form, we will extract them from over here. If you want to manually trigger the validation, right? It is very useful for multi-step form. It comes out of the box from React hook form. We also have something like set value, which will help us manually set the value. And we have something like reset, which will reset the form to empty or to certain value as we want it to have. Okay. Now, before moving forward, what I want to do is I want to create this custom hook right here so that we have simplicity in structuring our form. So over here in SRC, I'm going to create a new folder called hooks. And I'll create a new file called use multi-step form.tsx. So when you're creating a custom form, they start with use keyword, right? And this is very important for your front-end interviews as well. They would ask you to create custom hooks inside of your interviews. So make sure to check out my front-end interview preparation course from the link in the description down below. I've discussed a lot of such questions inside of there. Okay. So over here, to create a hook, it's basically like a function. So I'll say export function use multi-step form. And let's just import the schemas for the form over here. So personal info schema, professional info schema, and billing info schema. All of these step schemas inside of an array, right? So that we can access them according to the current step. And we can also define how the steps are going to look like, right? The JSON for it. So export const steps equal, and inside this array, it's going to look something like this. It will have an ID, which let's say personal, name, personal info, and import this user icon from Lucid React, which comes out of the box from ShadCN UI. So this is basically the key and is the name, right? Similar to this, we can have for professional and billing as well, right? Let's import this icon right here. And if you want, you can also create the type over here. So I'll create a step type, which is going to be step array. So right here in the types.ts, I'll say export interface step with ID string, name string, and icon is going to be react.content type. Make sure to import React. Class name is going to be a string, right? This is how the icon type looks like. And there's one more type that I want to create over here. So basically over here, if you see, step form data can be either of these three things, but there can be a scenario where we need the complete type, right? Maybe it's when we are generating our final response. So I can say all form field, and I'm going to take all these three, that this field contains all of this schema right here. And I'll show you where we'll be using it. So bear with me. Let's close this. And now over here, let's import this step from our types file. Now inside of our custom hooks, we are going to be having a few states. First of all, to check the current step. So I'll say current step, set current step, and I'll take use state right here, which will be 0 by default. We're going to start with 0th index, right? For the step. We are also going to be having a state which will contain our whole form data. So it will look something like this: form data, set form data. And inside this, we will take this step form data right here. Now this is partial. It's because we are making these optional over here because we don't know which form will be active at which time. So it can contain either of these three schemas, right? And then the third state is going to be is submitted state, right? So by default, it will be false. Okay. Now let's also have a couple of variables called is first step and is last step. This will be useful later on. So basically, if the current step is 0, then it's first step. If current step is steps.length -1, that is these steps.length -1, then it is the last step, right? This will help us to show those buttons at the bottom, like next and back buttons. Then we will also take a few more helper functions right here, like getting the current step schema. So basically, we will take this step schema right here, and it will take the current step from over here, and it will return us get current step schema. So if you remember, I showed you, this is where we will be using it, right? To configure our React hook form according to the current form. then we will have a couple of functions for going to the next step and the previous step. So over here, I'll first have go to next step. So I'll check if we are not on the last step, then we can go to the next step by saying set current step, this one, previous plus 1. And same for going to the previous step. So I'll say go to previous step. And if it's not the first step, then we can go to the previous step, right? If we are not on the very first form. Okay, nice. After this, so if you notice, inside of our form right here, when we are entering the data, let's say if we have entered this data, right? When we press next, we have to update the form data variable. That is this state right here, form data state, right? So first of all, it will update it. Then we press next, it will update it again, something like this. So for that, let's have a function for merging and updating the data. So I'll say update form data. It will take the new data that we're supposed to add inside of the form. It will again be the same as our form data state. And it will say set form data. It will take the previous state. It will spread the previous state and then it will spread the new data so that it gets merged into that, even if we update the old data as well, right? Let's also have a function for submitting the form. So I'll say submit form. Data will be final like this step form data as well, this thing. Inside of this, we're going to simply show console log. If you want, you can show whatever like API call right here or whatever that you want to do. We're just going to simply show our data right here. And I'll say set is submitted to true. And then after this is done, we can reset the form as well, right? So when we are resetting the form, we have to make sure for all of these states, I'll say set form data to be empty, set current step to be 0, and set is submitted to be false. So this will happen obviously after the form is submitted. Now, so we have created all of these helper functions, all of these states and all, right? Let's go on and return them from over here so that we can use them throughout our application. So first of all of the variables, like all of these state, current step, form data is submitted. And is it first step, is it last step, and all the steps from over here as well. Then after this, let's supply all the methods that we have created as well. Like go to next step, go to previous step, update form data, submit form, reset, and get current step schema as well. Right, and that is what our custom hook is going to be looking like. Nice. Let's close it and let's go back to our multi-step form component to create it. Now let me just uncomment it out. So let's import this from our hook. Over here, let's import our hook. Something like this. I'll say const. And from inside of this, we're going to be taking out all of these things. So let me just take it out and I'll just write some description for you guys as well. Something like this. You can go through this to get a proper idea of all of these steps. Okay, now let's start using it one by one. So first of all, obviously we're using this get current step data right here. We're going to have the mode to be on change so that as soon as we have changed the value inside of the form, it will check for any errors. Then after this, we are going to be providing the default values, which will be form data, right? So inside of this hook, we have this form data, right? Whatever the form data is currently, we'll put it as default value. So currently it is empty, obviously, right? So nice. Let's also do one thing. We're going to have a use effect right here. So let's do something like this. And inside of this, inside the dependency array, I'll say if current step changes or the form data changes, then we'll make sure that we reset our form with the current data that we have. So if you notice, when I click on previous, it has all of these values, right? So how does it have? Because we are changing the step, and as soon as the step is changed, it has reset the form with the previously existing values over there inside of the form data. So this is a very crucial step if you want to retain all of the values. Make sure to import use effect just like this. All right, now let's first go on and create the basic layout for our form. Currently, obviously, it looks something like this, right? So inside of over here in this div, first of all, let's just give it some class name of minimum height to be screen, that is 100 viewport height. Display is going to be flex, item center, justify center, background gray of 50, and padding is going to be 4. So something like this, it will appear at the very middle. Then inside of this, let's use the card component from ShadCN UI. So I'm going to go to ShadCN UI and over here, the card component. So just simply copy it up like this and paste it. We're not going to be needing both of these inside the header or even the title, because this is where we will show that progress, that where we are currently in the form. So I'll just say progress over here for now. Then we'll have the card content. We are not going to be using card footer. So let's import it like this, card header and the card. So make sure that this is imported from ./UI/card. Let's see. Yep, something like this. It looks good. I'm just going to be providing this a little bit width full and max width to be 2XL. So it is this big. For the card content, I'm going to have the class name of space y to be 6. So there's some gap between the elements that are inside of it. Now let's discuss how we'll be structuring this. So first of all, over here, as I mentioned, this will contain the progress, right? So for here, I'm going to be creating a progress steps component. So if I show you over here, this is the component that I'm talking about. So progress steps. Let's create this. So over here in the components, I'm going to create a new file called progress steps.tsx, RAFCE, progress steps. Okay, let's import it right here. And this will actually take two things. First, the current step that is coming from this, our custom hook, and all of these steps. So obviously it will show the error because we have not configured these props inside of it. So we will take current step and steps, and also we need to define the type over here. So inside of this, I'm going to say current step is going to be of type number and steps is going to be of type step of array. So let's import step that we created inside of our types file. So now this should not give any error, yes. Okay, now inside the card content, as I showed you, we will have our form right here. And with respect to the current step, we will show it. Like, let me show you. I'm going to say if current step is equals to 0, and then inside of this, you can show that particular component. Like for example, something like this, personal info step, right? Similar to that, we can show other components like professional info step or billing info step. Now these are just 3, right? So let me just first say 1 and 2. So these are just 3, so we can write it like this. But normally what you should do, you should just create a map with respect to the component, and then you should render that map according to the current step. Let's create these files real quick as well. I mean, these all will be inside of a single steps file. So I'll say steps.tsx, RAFCE. First will be the professional info step. Let me just get rid of it. And I'm going to duplicate it 2 times. This will be professional info. Sorry, first for personal, second professional, third is billing step. And then in the end, I'm going to export all of these just like this, right? So now I can import them over here. We will send them the props in just a moment. So make sure that change the content inside of it as well so that we can see the form change. Okay, so yeah, this looks good. If I go back now inside of our app, yes, we can see the personal info step right now. Okay, let's just create these buttons over here so that we can navigate between these forms, right? So over here below it, I'm gonna have a div which will contain both of those buttons, right? So let's import the button tag from ShadCN UI. This one will be for the previous. So I'll have type button variant outline, and I'm going to give it the icon of chevron left. So let me show you how this looks. And I'll also write previous over here. So see, something like this, previous. And let's just duplicate it below it. I'll say type button, that's fine. Variant I'll remove to be outline. And over here, actually, I'm going to check if we are on the last step. So I'll say is last step to be true, then we'll show submit. Otherwise, we will show next, and we will also show the chevron right. So I'll say if it's not the last step, then I'll show chevron right icon to go next. Something like this. Let's give this div some class name of displayFlex, justify between, and padding top to be 4. Yes, this looks good. Now for both of these buttons, first of all, for the previous one, we have already created the functions over here, right? So go to previous step and go to next step. So first of all, I'll take go to previous step. This is going to be very simple. I'll just simply say on click, sorry, not over here, over here. I'll say on click to be go to previous step. And then if it's the first step, then I'll disable it. So disable equals is first step. For the next step, we are going to be having much more logic, right? Because if it's handle submit, we need to handle that as well over here, right? So for this one, I'm going to be creating another function called on next, and this will be an asynchronous function. This will take the data in case we are trying to submit the form, and the step form data will be the type of this data, right? Inside of this, first of all, when the user presses next, we need to check if the values that user has entered are valid, right? If you go on over here, you see, I'll just refresh it. So see, it's empty right now, right? If I press next, see, we checked for the validation first. So that is what we're supposed to do over here. So I'll say manual validation check. Okay. I'll just add the pointers for now. Then after that, I'm going to say merge current step data with all of the previous data, right? That's what we're going to do. Like whatever data that we get, let's say in this one, we need to merge it with the previous one in the final state. And by the way, we're gonna check the validation first, and we will check if we are still in the middle step, then we will let user go to the next step. Otherwise, we will submit the form. Right. So anyways, so before writing this logic, let me just take this on and go right over here in this button, and I'll say on, click, and I'll say handle submit that we took out from right here, right? And we'll provide it this on next right here. If you've worked with React hook forms before, like React hook form before, this is how we do it. We take this handle submit from right here and we provide this on next over here so that it gives it this whole data, right? But let's just forget about it for a second and let's first work on our personal info step, professional and billing info, right? So let's go on right here and start working on each and every one of these. Now, all of these will require different types of input, right? And we will again and again have to write the same logic of adding the label, the input tag, and the register tag from React hook form to each and every one of these, right? So how about we create a common form field component and we can reuse it in all three of these. Hold on, let me show you. So over here, I'm going to create a new file called formfield.tsx, AFCE form field. Now, when it comes to React hook form, so if I show you over here, I told you we have this register, right, which will be responsible for taking the values from inside of the form. So over here, inside this div, we will have an input tag. So input that looks, we will be importing it from shadcn.ui, that is ./UI/input, and this will take that register tag. So obviously we will have to supply the register from the props. So I'll supply it from over here. We will also supply a few more things, like for example, the ID of the input and the label. We will supply if there's any error related to this input field, right? So we are abstracting all of this logic right here. So I'll say errors, type is going to be text by default, and max length. Let's write the type for these as well. So I'll say colon, and right here, I'll say ID and key of all form field. So basically, if you remember this all form field, right? It can be either of, like key can be in any one of these, right? We have this component which supports all of the fields, right? That's why we have key of all form fields, label string. Inside a register, we will take out the return type of the use form hook. So we'll define use form and with the step form data, just like we did before. And we will take out all of the things that this returns and we will take register from it. So you see we have a bunch of different options over here, right? But we want register. Next, for errors, we are basically going to define the type of this object. For that, we use record and it will have this message, which is of type string. And the input type string and max length will be number. Okay. Now over here, inside of it, first of all, I'll give it the class name space y2b2. And we will have the label from shadcn.ui. So I'll say label HTML for ID and the label. So import this label from ./UI. So this will be the ID that will provide the label and both the input, something like this. Then we will have the type of the input tag along with the max length if there's any provided. So I'll say type is going to be type, like it can be number, text, whatever, email. Max length is going to be max length. And then we will take the register from React hook form. So I'll say register and we need to spread it, something like this. And we'll provide it with the ID. That is the ID. Let me show you. This is basically the ID that we're trying to get over here, right? Then if there's any error related to that input, we will render the error right here. So I'll say errors. So we are taking the errors, right? Yes. So this will be an object. So I'll say if that input field has any error, so with respect to the ID, and then I'm going to render a paragraph tag right here, something like this with text small and text destructive with errors ID dot message. Yeah, pretty much that's what it is. And let's take this form field and let's try to go on and finally render it inside of our form. So over here in the steps, first of all, let's say for this one, I'll give this div the class name of space y to be 4. And inside of this, let's give this the card title of professional details. Oh wait, this is for personal info, right? So I'll say personal information. Let's import this card title. So we're basically using this card title over here without the card component is because card component is on the top. If you may have noticed, see over here, these are inside of over here, right? That's why. So let's see. Yep, something like this, professional information. Looks good. Then let's create our form. So first of all, 2 columns for the first name and last name. So I'll have a div with grid columns 2 and gap to be 4. Now this part will be very simple, right? It's just basic Tailwind CSS and just rendering the form elements right here. So over here, I'll take the form field that we just now created. I'll provide it with the ID first name, label, first name, register function. So obviously we need to take this register function from outside. So I'll take register and the errors over here. So errors, let's write the type of it as well. So I'll just define the prop types, which this will be common throughout all of these steps. So register and errors I've already explained you. Same with set value as well. We are taking the return type of set value for this use form, right? I'll take this type as well. And I'll take this set props and provide it over here. So let's see. Oh yeah, it will give the error because we have not provided it with register and the error. So right here, I'm gonna send, register and the error. So now let's see. Yes, we can see the first name over here. Let's do the same for last name as well. So below it, I'll have another form field with ID last name, label last name, register and errors. So it will appear, yes, over here. Now below it, we need to add the email and the phone number. So right below this div, I'm gonna have a form field of ID email, label email address, register and errors, and type email, right? The text was by default, so we have to provide custom type over here. Same for phone as well. So I'll say ID phone, label phone number, register, errors, and type TEL. See, something like this. If you want, you can also provide placeholders over here as well. Cool. Now for professional info step, I'll take register, errors, and set value, and we'll provide the step props type over here. Let me just duplicate this whole thing, this whole div, and then we'll make the changes accordingly. I'll just paste it right here. I'll just get rid of these things. First of all, this will be professional details. Then below it, we're gonna have the form field for company and the position. So I'll say ID company, label company, register errors for position as well. And also we need to provide the props. And by the way, this set value over here is needed for the select component that we will be having over here. So first of all, let me just provide it. So register errors and set value. So I've added the comment for you as well over here. Let's actually provide to our billing info step over here as well. Obviously we have not defined the props. So let me just define the props as well. Something like this. Now after this, we're gonna have the select tag. So I'm gonna create a div right here with class name space y2b2, and I'll have the label of HTML for experience, right? Let's import this label right here. And then over here, we're not gonna be using form field. We're gonna be using the select component. So right here from chat.cn UI, we have installed select, right? So yes, this is what we wanted. So I'll just copy it and paste it right here. Let's make sure to import select trigger. Make sure to import it from / only. So / select item. And now over here inside the select trigger is what our button will look like, right? And inside this, we are supposed to enter our options. So inside the select trigger, I'll just simply say select experience. Let me just remove this class name from over here and let's see. So by default, it's 0, right? So let me just make it 1. Inside of hooks, I'll just make it 1 over here so that we see the professional. Yes, like this. Okay, yeah, we can see all of these options, but this is not the option that we want. We want all of the experiences, right? So over here, I'm gonna say 0 to 2 is 3 to 5, 6 to 10, 10 plus, right? And with all of these values. Below it, we can display the errors just like before. So errors.experience, if there's any error, then I'll say errors.experience.message. All right, let's see. Yeah, something like that. Now we have this set value, right? So we will make use of it to update our form. So over here on value change, I'll take a callback. It will give us the value, the current value that we have selected from the select box. And here I'll say set value, and we want to set the value of experience, right? And it will be this value right here. Now we have to define types and all over here. So first of all, let me just say question mark dot, and let's define the value over here as well, the type of value. So I'll say as extract. So we want to get the values of set form data, right? Like we are extracting basically the type of set form data, and we are taking the experience over here. So I'm saying experience string. So now over here, we can select what we want. So we want experience. So that is how we will define the type of value over here. And we want to trigger the validation immediately, right? So over here, I'll say should validate to be true. So it will show us if the selected value is fine or not. Now after this, I'll just simply say set experience to value. And for this, we will keep a local state. So right here, I'll say experience, set experience, and actually I'll say use state from React, and we'll take this experience now. And below this, simply I'll just provide value of experience to this select tag, something like this. Yes, now it is updating properly. Great. Below this, we also want industry form field. So below this div, I'll have this form field, ID industry, label industry, we're going to provide the register, we're going to provide the error, right? Simple enough. Let's do the same thing to the billing as well quickly. So inside of billing, I'm going to be having card title with billing information, and we'll have the fields like card number. So ID will be card number. We've already defined these in Zord, right? Max length is going to be 16 for this one, for the input. Then we will have the card holder name, just like before. After this, we will have a 2-column layout for expiry and CVV. So we'll have a div right here. Inside of this, we're going to have 2 form fields. First one for expiry date and second one for CVV. Again, this one will have max length of 5 and this one will have max length of 4. Let's go and check it out. So this one is done. Let's change this manually. So obviously we have not implemented the next feature. That's why we have to change it manually for now. I'll just refresh it. Yes, you can see billing information is also there. Okay, I'll just make it 0 now. And now finally, let's go on over here in the multi-step form and write the logic for on next and submit as well. All right, so right here on next. So first of all, we'll check the validation. So I'll say const is valid await trigger. So we will trigger form field validation manually through this. And let's check what we get. So first of all, actually, I'll come right here and click on submit. You see, we are getting all of these in real time, right? We cannot go further. So it is showing submit over here. This is not correct. It's not the last step. So, okay, it is billing information. Yeah, now if I click on next, yes, now you can see properly, it shows us the error. Okay, this is a good sign. So I'm going to say if is valid is not true, then return. So we will stop if the validation fails. Now we're going to be updating our form data. So we'll take this form data from our hook right here. So over here, and then I'll take the previous form data and then add the new data that we are getting from right here. So if I show you, let me just console log this first. So I'll just go to inspect console. And if I click on next, nothing will happen obviously. But if I say Piyush and click on next, okay, let's just fill this whole thing up. Let's click on next now. Yes, you see, we get this data right here. And form data would be empty right now. So if I just say form data as well, click on next, see, it is empty right now since we have not added anything. Okay, so let's just update the form data. I'll say update form data with this updated data right here. Okay, now if we are on last step, so I'm going to say if we are on last step, then we're gonna perform the submit action. But if not, I'll say else. If we are not on last step, then we will simply trigger go to the next step. So go to next step function that we have created inside of our hook, right? So now you will notice if I click on next, yes, it goes to next. Okay, nice. So let's just actually submit this one as well. So if you notice now when I'll let's say if I say front end, if I choose experience, let's just put test over here. Now if I press next, you will see it is already populated. The form data is already populated and now it will add this new data inside of it. Okay, nice. But when we press submit, okay, let me just fill this again. Let me just enter some random stuff over here. CVV, let's click on submit. And now you see nothing happens. It's because we are not submitting the form over here. So over here, what we will simply do, we will simply have a try catch block, something like this. So inside the try block, we will trigger this submit form function from right here. So if you don't remember, this submit form looks something like this. As I told you, you can trigger it. You can put any API call or whatever right here, right? With the updated data, it's on you. We are just simply console logging it. Otherwise, we will catch the error. So let's see. Let's just start from the beginning. I'll just put my name and phone number over here. Next, let's put some random details. Next, okay, we are on submit. Let's just again put once over here, some random text and CVV and click on submit. And now you'll see final submitted data, right? It has triggered the submit and we got all of this data right here. Awesome. So our form is working, but the only thing remaining right now is to create this stepper component over here, right? The progress component. So right here, we have this progress steps, right? So let's go inside of this component. Now over here, first of all, let's just provide some class names to this parent div. Display flags justify between an item to be center for all of the 3 steps or however many steps are over there, right? So we're going to be simply rendering them. So I'll say steps dot map. Inside this, I'll take each and every step, comma, index. Inside this callback, I'll first of all extract all of these 3 things, right? So if you remember in the type, a step had ID, name, and icon. So I'll say icon equals step.icon is completed. If index is less than the current step, then obviously it's not completed. And is current equals index if it's equals to the current step so that we can show the darkening of that particular step, right? So after that, I'll say turn, and inside of it, I'll first of all take a div with key step.id. So step, actually this is step, not steps. So step.id and some class name, and inside of this, we will show each and every circle. So for the circle, I will have a div of display flex, flex column, items to be center. And inside of it, we can say if that particular step is completed, then we'll show the check icon, just like this. Otherwise, the original icon. So let's see. Yes, something like this. If I fill it up, see, and press on next, see, it turned into tick mark, right? So we need to style this as well. So I'm going to wrap them inside of a div, just like this. And for this div, I'll have the class name. I'll actually put it inside of a curly brace. Inside of backticks, I'll first of all have width 10, height 10, rounded full, display flex, items to be center, justify to be center, and transition colors. So something like this, so that it has some even gap. Now over here, I'll take the template string and I'll say is completed is true. That is, that particular step has been completed. Then I'm gonna show background primary, text primary foreground. Otherwise, if it is current, then I'll say is current to be true. Then I'll say background primary and text primary foreground, same. Otherwise, we'll say background gray to be 200, text gray to be 500. Let's see. Yes, something like this. We also need to actually have the name on the bottom, right? So below this div, I'll say text XS, margin top to be 2, font medium, and the name of that particular step. So now if you see, yes, something like this. Let's also have the lines in between. So they will be very straightforward. So below this div, I'm going to have it index is less than steps dot length minus 1. Then we'll show a div. If that particular step is completed, then we're going to darken that particular line, right? Otherwise, it will be gray 200. So now if you see over here, see, this one is completed. That's why this is darkened, but this is not completed. So this is light right now. And yeah, this is how you basically create a multi-step form. This right here is a very important interview question as well, by the way, called stepper. I have created a completely separate video on this, so you can check it out from link in the description down below. And also, don't forget to check out my front-end interview preparation course. Right now, we're having the biggest Diwali sale of the year, so don't miss it.